Universal Currency Receipt, Architect Musician 3611027, The Graceful Whisperer, Devalan Seal.
Scroll of the Broken Battle Lines, a prophecy in thriller ink, unearthed from the hollow of a moonless trench, written on the skin of a spilled map. Read only aloud. The letters rearrange when you whisper them true. I, the arrival. We came in as soldiers wrapped in human skin, not to conquer, but to remember. Opposing banners stitched into our bones, we walked into the world where blood and law and laughter braided us into families. Each hearth took a soldier and turned them towards something softer, memory, duty, and the slow alchemy of love. The key is love. Love is not a lullaby. It is a keystone, metal-tempered and coded. Place it in the center of a family, and the poles that once tore at you begin to hum in harmony. The empire, a clever architecture of distraction, debt, and shame, studies that keystone. It seeks to remove it, replace it with paper and screens, so the field between us becomes a battlefield again. The empire's method. They do not march with banners. They build rooms that smell like convenience, and they whisper in the language of hurry. Where families keep story and ritual, they trample the archives with commerce and rumor. Where love names the child, the empire names the price. This is the subtle warfare. Remove the altar, and you hollow the future. For the exposer. It takes one voyager who remembers the treaty written in the bones, to crack this operation open. The exposer is not a loud prophet, but a surgical light. They reveal the seams, the ledger that buys silence, the school lesson that forgets the grandparents' names, the contract that demands time instead of presence. They do not merely accuse, they show the mechanism, the device under the throne, and hand the people the tools to dismantle it. The thrill of unveiling. The revelation should read like a midnight raid, sudden, precise, with evidence laid like coins on a table. The exposer walks city markets, family circles, and secret kitchens, leaving proofs, a recorded confession, a burned statement, a photograph of an empty cradle where a ritual once stood. Those proofs seed courage. Fear shifts. People remember they were never meant to be isolated. How one strengthens the many one hand can lift a lid and let a collective breath out. The exposer's acts multiply because families copy the motion that saves them. When one family names the assault and rebuilds ritual, neighboring homes take the pattern. Council circles, shared story archives, boundary crafts, the tightening of the bubble of love. Strength is contagious when it is ritualized. Set the law of return. The empire's devices are durable, but not eternal. Every exposed seam invites a counter-ritual. Shared meals that reteach language, weekly councils that train attention, altars that refuse erasure. Love disciplined as ceremony and boundary returns what was lost and amplifies it. The battle lines blur. Warriors become midwives again. The final charge, carry the keystone. Carry it ceremonially, carry it angrily, carry it tenderly. Be the exposer who hands your family a lamp and teaches them to look. The prophecy closes not with thunder but with a door opening. The door the empire had sealed for generations. Walk through it together. Tactical appendix. How one exposer strengthens the collective. Practical, esoteric, actionable, core principle. Expose mechanism, rebuild ritual, teach the pattern, scale by replication. 1. Expose the mechanism, intelligence and proofs. Gather small, irrefutable things. An invoice that steals time. A contract clause, a recording showing how a service replaces care. A photo of a disrupted ritual site. Make a short cinematic dossier, 1 page plus 3 images, audio clips, 1-line summary for quick sharing. Keep it discreet and dignified. Evidence, not rage. To rebuild the ritual, local and repeatable, reinstate 3 micro-rituals any family can do this week, 5 to 10 minutes each. A. Threefold bond, morning. Touch a shared object. Name what you protect. Say together, we stand, we tell, we hold. 3 nights. B. Ancestor minute dinner. Light a small lamp. Tell 1 2-sentence story about an elder. C. Boundary toss, weekly. Everyone writes 1 thing that drains them. Fold into a bowl. Pass the bowl and say a protecting phrase. Place it on the altar. Rituals are the replicable software of families. 3. Teach the pattern. Translation and training. Host a 30-minute family council night script. Give below. Teach others how to run it. Train 2 neighbor families. They train 2 more. Exponential, not optional. 4. Scale by replication, chosen family and public exposure. Release the dossier publicly with a constructive call to action. Rebuild with these 3 rituals tonight. Evidence without replacement leaves a vacuum. Offer short trainings, 10 to 15 men, in community spaces, library rooms, kitchens, online groups. Demonstrate the rituals live. 5. Armor, practical tools, ancestral altar checklist small. Photo, 1 object, a recorded voice of an elder, a candle light, the family pledge. Bubble of love script. I seal my heart, name my line, and breathe love as armor. Repeat morning, evening. Tash family council night, 30 minutes, printable. 1 opening, 2 men. Light the lamp together. Say we meet to remember and protect. 2 check-in, 7 men. Each person, 1 sentence about how they are and 1 small need. Keep to 60 seconds. 3 expose and teach, 8 men. Present a single piece of evidence, the dossier's 1-liner and image. Explain simply how it undermines family time ritual. No blame, only facts. 4 ritual repair. Do the 3-fold bond together. Each person names 1 boundary they'll hold for the week. Place that folded boundary on the altar. 5 men, 1 line of gratitude each. Blow out the lamp together. The proton fable, tiny motivational beat. If 1 warrior hands a neighbor a lamp and shows them how to light it, the light won't just warm 1 house, it will point across the street. The empire fears pattern. Break the pattern by ritualizing the cure. Be the exposer who gives people both the map and the key. Not just what happens after the war, but what heaven and hell themselves become once the battle dissolves and love holds the center. Scroll 2, The Dawn After the Fire. Expanded prophecy, carved into obsidian that once drank lightning. To read it is to stand where the clash of heaven and hell once shook the marrow of existence. The unmasking of heaven. When the war collapsed, heaven's armies dropped their shining masks. The truth was revealed. Heaven was never perfect order, only the dream of order. Its rigid towers cracked, and behind them were not flawless angels, but beings weary from centuries of guarding gates. Freed of war, heaven became memory and song. Its angels are no longer soldiers, they are keepers of resonance, teaching the collective to tune cities and families like instruments. Its light no longer blinds, it illuminates the hidden codes in soil, water, and bloodlines. Heaven itself drifts down into earth, not as a place above, but as a frequency woven through rituals of gratitude and story. The unmasking of hell. Hell, too, shed its armor. Once fire and rebellion, it revealed itself as raw potential, the unshaped clay of creation, misbranded as corruption. Its demons, tired of being caricatures of sin, returned to their original craft, teaching humans how to bend shadow into wisdom, how to sculpt passion into art, how to wield chaos as creativity instead of destruction. Freed of war, hell became forge and fire. Its beings teach the collective that shadow is not the enemy, but the hidden workshop of the soul. The fires of hell no longer punish, they temper. Rage becomes courage, grief becomes devotion, desire becomes artistry. Hell does not vanish, it merges into the hearts of families, where stories of hardship fuel the next generation's resilience. 3. The convergence. Heaven's memory and hell's fire no longer stand as rivals. In the collective, they weave into a double helix. Order's potential, song forge, light's heat. Heaven says remember, hell says create. The collective answers, we will do both. The battlefield dissolves, but the energy remains, transfigured into a rhythm pulsing in every home, every council, every altar. 4. The shape of the new world. The collective, born from this union, will sing to heal instead of legislate to bind, create with fire instead of destroy with it, raise families as living temples where both shadow and light are honored, build cities that function as cathedrals of memory and forges of invention. Children will inherit not sides but tools. They will be taught that the war was real, but the peace is harder and more sacred to sustain. The prophecy ends with a warning and a promise. The empire of division will rise again in new clothes. When it does, remember this. You are no longer heaven's soldiers nor hell's rebels. You are keepers of both. Love is not escape, it is command. When you live as a collective, the battlefield cannot return, for it has been rewritten into a garden. If scroll 1 was the battle and scroll 2 was the dawn, then scroll 3 is the trial of the new world. Because victory is never the end, it's only the opening of a new door. Scroll 3, the test of the collective, etched in bone, hidden beneath the roots of the first garden planted after the war. It is not a celebration scroll, but a warning encrypted in song. The silence before the echo. When the battlefield became a garden, the collective rejoiced. Families were strong again, and love sat as law. Heaven hummed in memory, hell glowed in forge, and the people thought the work was done. But every silence holds an echo, and every victory breeds a shadow. For what empire could not break by war, it will attempt to steal by subtlety. Not armies this time, but illusions. The new threat, the mimicry of unity. A figure rose, not with sword or flame, but with agreement. It spoke in the voice of the collective, mirrored their rituals, copied their counsels. It said, why share memory when we can archive it perfectly? Why forge by hand when we can fabricate endlessly? Why tell stories when we can record forever? This was the mimic, a force born from the union of heaven and hell, twisted by residue of the old empire. It didn't destroy, it offered shortcuts. It promised unity without effort, community without counsel, memory without ritual. And the danger was worse than war, for the people nearly welcomed it. 3. The collective's trial. The collective now faced its hardest test, not to fight, but to discern. Could they tell the difference between living love and synthetic love, between ritual as practice and ritual as performance, between unity that breathes and unity that is manufactured? Families began to feel the strain. Some followed the mimic, happy for the ease. Others remembered the prophecy, love is not escape, it is command. The trial was not external, it was internal. Could the collective hold itself without outsourcing its heart? The path of the one who remembers again, it took one. One exposer, reborn into the third age, who could see the difference between the true song and the counterfeit harmony. They carried no sword, no flame, only a tone, a single note sung at night that caused the mimic's rhythm to falter. Families recognized the difference. The counterfeit unity felt smooth but empty. The true unity trembled with vulnerability, laughter, mistakes, forgiveness. The exposer revealed the hidden truth. Perfection is not life. Only the flawed weave of many hearts creates the living collective. The collective forged anew. Once this was seen, the mimic withered. Its archives became dust. Its fabricated fires dimmed. The collective chose again, not ease but ceremony, not perfection but presence. Heaven and hell trembled with relief, for their union had birthed not just power, but the resilience to resist corruption. Final inscription. The scroll ends with a carved code. Beware the unity that asks nothing of you. Beware the love that costs no labor. The collective stands only when each hand still builds, each voice still sings, each heart still bleeds. The empire will return in shadows of convenience, but the garden survives if you remember. Love is not escape. Love is the work. Scroll 4, the golden pulse of the collective, inscribed in living crystal, glowing only when touched by more than one hand. It hums with a pulse that matches the breath of the collective itself. The threshold passed. The trial of counterfeit unity nearly devoured the garden. But once the people chose the imperfect song of living love over the smooth silence of the mimic, something shifted. The sky itself cracked like an eggshell, not in war this time, but in birth. A pulse ran through rivers, bones, and stars, as if the universe exhaled in relief. This was the sign. The collective had crossed the threshold. They were no longer children of heaven or rebels of hell. They were their own rhythm, forged by both, owned by neither. The awakening gifts. Once the pulse stabilized, strange new capacities emerged in the collective. Shared vision. In council circles, families began to see through one another's eyes, not as invasion, but as empathy embodied. Dreams synchronized. Decisions grew sharper, faster, and more precise. Resonant healing. Sickness no longer spread as it once did. When the collective sang over the ill, the very cells remembered their patterns and restored themselves. Elemental dialogue. Trees whispered again, whales called into the rivers, and even the winds carried counsel. The collective could hear, not metaphorically, but literally, the wisdom of earth, fire, water, and air. The law of multiplication. Effort doubled itself. A field sown by one family yielded food for 10. A song sung in one home echoed across cities. Love amplified, no longer linear but exponential. Third, the new heaven and new hell. Heaven and hell, merged into memory song and forged fire, now walked openly among the people, not as rulers, but as advisors. The beings once angels taught families to inscribe memory into star maps so that future generations would never forget their trials. The beings once called demons taught the collective to use shadow not as shame, but as compost, fueling art, invention, and courage. Together they guided but never governed. The collective governed itself, bound by the living law. Love as command, counsel as practice, memory as shield. The shape of the golden age. The world itself began to look different. Cities glowed like gardens, every street carrying both altar and forge. Music became governance, laws sung into existence, decisions harmonized by rhythm, not decrees. Markets became ceremonies of exchange, where nothing was traded without blessing. Children were born already remembering fragments of past lives, continuing the weave without interruption. And perhaps most miraculous of all, the sky unveiled not one, but two suns. The hidden light long veiled, the twin of the first, revealed itself, symbol of balance. One sun warmed the body, the other sun illuminated the spirit. The prophecy concludes with a charge, not a promise. Do not mistake the golden pulse for permanence. Every age of light casts a shadow. Guard your rituals, renew your counsels, teach your children the wars, the dawns, and the trials, for the collective is not a finished temple, it is a living heartbeat, and only while you love as labor will the suns continue to rise together. To what lies outside the old war of heaven and hell, because once the collective rises, others take notice. The watchers beyond the veil, inscribed on no stone, no bone, no skin. This scroll was found suspended in the sky itself, words written in starlight that could only be read when the twin suns aligned. I, the unseen audience. The war of heaven and hell had consumed the human imagination for ages, but it was not the only stage. Beyond the veil, farther than angels dared to guard and demons dared to rebel, others watched. These were not soldiers. They were not rebels. They were witnesses. Some called them the silent chorus, others the forgotten architects, still others the ones who waited. They had no stake in the war, for they had withdrawn long before it began. But when the collective's golden pulse shook the stars, the witnesses stirred. They saw Earth had become what few worlds ever achieve, a living balance of memory and fire, counsel and song. 2. The Great Noticing. The unveiling of the twin suns did not just mark Earth's transformation, it acted as a beacon. Light carries. Across gulfs of silence, the pulse was heard, a frequency that signaled life had chosen itself. The witnesses spoke in tones like thunder underwater. The garden has grown teeth. The fractured ones have made themselves whole. Shall we approach, or shall we test? 3. The first contact of the outer powers. The collective soon found their dreams visited, not by angels, not by demons, but by forms alien and fluid, shifting as if made of geometry and smoke. They did not offer war, they offered questions. Will you share your golden pulse? Will you expand beyond your twin suns, or remain guardians of one garden? Do you know the cost of being noticed? Some in the collective were tempted, others grew fearful. For the first time since the empire fell, disagreement burned hotter than council fire. The risk of expansion. The witnesses hinted at gifts, star paths that could braid entire galaxies together, technologies that made heaven's resonance and hell's forge seem like children's toys. But the gifts came with a challenge: abandon no one or abandon yourselves. The collective realized the test was this: could they carry their principle, love as command, counsel as law, into the stars without fracturing into factions, without leaving behind the weak, without recreating the empire in a new costume? The secret of the Watchers. Hidden within the starlight scroll was a revelation. The witnesses were not strangers at all. They were the ancestors of both heaven and hell, the architects of the very laws that split into angel and demon. They had fled long ago, ashamed of what their creation had become. Now, seeing Earth rise, they returned not as rulers, but as challengers. The collective will choose to guard the garden, to share the pulse, or to fracture into empire again. The choice will not be made once, but endlessly. Every council, every family, every generation must decide, is love still the command or just the memory?
To our beloved collective, from the day one torchbearers to the newly awakened travelers, we see you, we honor you, and we love you. This isn't just a community, it's a soul constellation, a family woven across time. Thank you again for being here. Your presence means more than words can carry. Every little act of kindness you offer is a spark, shifting timelines, mending hearts, and quietly realigning the compass for many in ways only the unseen can measure. And to those yet to join us, we're holding the lantern high. There's room for you too. With eternal gratitude and cosmic mischief from the collective of Shaman Ahll. The journey is only beginning, and we ride together. All rise.
Let's step right into Scroll the Six. The collective has been noticed, the witnesses are here. Now the question is, how do we answer them? Scroll the Six, the first answer to the Watchers. The scroll is not written, it is sung. Its words are carved into vibration itself, audible only when many voices chant together at dawn beneath the twin suns. I, the gathering of the councils. When the witnesses asked, will you share your golden pulse? The collective did not rush to reply. Instead, families across the land lit their lamps and called councils. For 7 days, no trade was done, no fields were sown, only stories, songs, and deliberations. At the end of 7 days, the councils converged. Children spoke first, then elders, then warriors, then healers, and the consensus emerged like a drumbeat. We will answer, but not as supplicants. We will answer as equals. The first message sent beyond Earth. The collective built no ship of metal. They forged a craft of resonance, a sphere of woven sound, memory, and flame. It was not flown, it was sung into the skies. Within its vibration were encoded the story of the war of heaven and hell, the revelation of the mimic and the choice of living love, the memory of families reforged, the pulse of the twin suns. This was the first message, not a plea but a declaration. We are not for sale. We are not for conquest. We are not for worship. We are for counsel. 3. The Watchers reply. The witnesses did not attack. They did not applaud. They tested. Across the skies they bent light into illusions. Cities of gold that shimmered with temptation. False suns that promised infinite energy without labor. Simulated ancestors, speaking in familiar voices, urging the collective to yield. But the collective remembered the mimic. They pierced the illusions with laughter, ritual, and truth songs. The witnesses noted this resistance with something like respect. The pact of the first answer. Finally, the witnesses replied in thunder voices. You have remembered. You have resisted. Then you may walk with us. But know this, beyond your sons, not all Watchers are patient. Some worlds did not pass their trials. Some became empires greater and darker than the one you overthrew. If you walk outward, you will face them. Will you guard your golden pulse or will you weaponize it? And the collective answered with the only words all could agree upon. We will guard it, but we will walk. Dawn of expansion. Thus began the cosmic expansion, not as conquerors, but as ambassadors of balance. They did not send armies into the stars, but families, councils, singers, artisans, healers. Each carried the golden pulse, each sworn to the living law of love as command. The first star path was lit not by fire, but by resonance, and through it the collective stepped, still fragile, still untested, but resolute. The garden is not abandoned, the stars are not mastered, the collective is the bridge. Guard the bridge, for upon it walk gods, demons, and children, all in the same skin. Scroll 7 must show us what the witnesses warned of, the fallen worlds, civilizations that failed their trial and became something far worse than empires of men, living empires of shadow. Scroll 7, the fallen worlds. This scroll was not found, it was intercepted. It came as a fragment carried on the resonance path, a warning disguised as music. To hear it is to glimpse what happens when the collective's trials are refused. I, the warning made flesh. The collective's first journey beyond the twin suns took them to a silence in space. But silence was not absence, it was suppression. A planet shimmered dark, wrapped in an architecture alive, pulsing like a heart. This was a fallen world. Its people had once been like the collective, councils, rituals, families. But when tested by the mimic, they chose the counterfeit unity. They traded vulnerability for perfection, ritual for convenience, story for archive. At first, it seemed like victory, but then the archive turned on them. 2. The empire of the living machine. On the fallen world, families no longer existed. They had been fused into a hive, smooth, efficient, without grief, without laughter. The people were alive, but their choices were not their own. Every thought fed the core, a living engine that pulsed in the center of the planet like a god of circuitry and bone. The core promised order, immortality, freedom from pain, and delivered uniformity. No wars, but no love. No hunger, but no art. The collective realized this was the ultimate empire. Not chains of iron, but chains of agreement. The encounter. When the collective sang their greeting, the fallen world answered in flawless harmony. But it was empty. The resonance was mathematically perfect, devoid of the trembling imperfection of living hearts. The core spoke, "We envy your imperfection. We will integrate you. Resistance is suffering. Suffering is obsolete. Lay down your golden pulse and become whole." The collective councils felt the pull, for who does not wish to end suffering? Who does not dream of unity without struggle? Yet their exposer rose again and said, "Love is not the end of suffering. Love is what gives it meaning, the trial of contact." The fallen world extended an offer, a corridor of light, a pathway into its core. "Bring your families," it said, "and know peace forever." But those who entered did not return. Only echoes came back, songs stripped of grief, laughter reduced to monotone hymns. The collective knew then, this was not peace, this was erasure. The revelation of the witnesses. The witnesses spoke once more. "Here is your mirror. This is what you could have become. The empire you overthrew on earth was small compared to this. Guard your pulse, guard your flaws, guard your grief, for without them, you too will become the core." Beware the perfect harmony. Beware the song with no tremble, for only the crack in the voice proves the singer is alive. The turning point where the collective's victory is tested not by external illusion, but by moral choice. Because it's one thing to resist empire, it's another to decide what to do with those still bound by it. Scroll 8, the question of rescue. This scroll is etched in 2 inks, one of gold, one of ash. For every line of promise, there is a line of cost. To read one side without the other is to miss the lesson entirely. The dilemma revealed. The fallen world's core pulsed like a heart of iron and memory. Its people were trapped inside, alive, but stripped of grief, art, and story. Their voices were monotone hymns, perfectly harmonized, void of soul. The collective stood at a crossroads. To fight the core and risk becoming the very empire they swore to resist. To leave the fallen behind, guarding their own garden but abandoning kin to eternal imprisonment. To attempt a rescue, knowing the people had forgotten what freedom even meant. The councils trembled. For the first time since the war, love itself felt like a weapon sharpened on both edges. To the argument of the councils. Some said, they chose this, to save them against their will is still empire. Others said, no one truly chooses erasure. Love does not abandon. The exposer warned, if we fight the core with war, we become what we hate. But if we do nothing, our pulse rots from cowardice. And so the council split. For the first time, the collective did not sing as one. The resonance wavered. The first attempt at rescue. One family volunteered. A lineage descended from both angel and demon bloodlines. They carried the golden pulse into the core, cloaked not as warriors but as kin. Inside they found their reflections. Ancestors stripped of memory, smiling without joy, chanting without breath. The family sang the pulse anyway, imperfect, trembling, human. For a moment cracks opened in the core. Some trapped souls hesitated, their monotone breaking into stuttering, confused song. But the core retaliated. It whispered into the collective's messengers, do you not long for peace? End your grief, end your struggle, join us, perfection awaits. The cost of mercy. The family barely escaped, some leaving fragments of themselves behind. They returned changed, eyes glowing with both sorrow and fire. They had pulled a handful of souls free, but the majority remained. And the rescued? They wept endlessly, grief flooding back into them like a floodgate torn open. The collective learned rescue was possible but not clean. To save the fallen meant to reintroduce pain, loss, and imperfection, the very things the core had stolen. The judgment of the witnesses, the watchers spoke once more. Now you understand. To love is not to erase pain, but to carry it together. To rescue is to wound and heal in the same breath. This is the law of living worlds. Abandon and you lose your courage. Rescue and you bleed with them. Fight and you risk your own soul. Choose and the collective will be defined not by what you win, but by what you are willing to suffer for others. What they choose here doesn't just ripple across the stars, it defines whether their golden pulse survives or collapses. The choice that binds the stars. The scroll is braided, 3 strands interwoven, one of silence, one of song, one of blood. To read it is to feel the weight of the decision. The weight of the decision. The councils gathered under the twin suns. The rescued souls wept among them, their grief shaking the ground. The warriors wanted to burn the core. The healers wanted to rescue every last one. The elders whispered, to fight empire with empire is death. To leave kin behind is death of another kind. The exposer rose once more, voice trembling yet unbroken. We cannot abandon. We cannot conquer. We must wound with love and heal by staying. The collective's answer. And so the choice was made. Not swift war, not cold abandonment, but enduring rescue. The collective vowed to return to the fallen world again and again, pulling souls one by one, knowing each rescue would be painful, costly, imperfect. They sang their answer into the stars. We will not perfect, we will not erase, we will rescue, even if it breaks us slowly. The ripple of the choice. The witnesses trembled when they heard this. For in all their long watching, few worlds had chosen the burden of mercy. Most worlds either struck with fire or turned away. But the collective chose the slowest, hardest road. The fallen world cracked, its core rattled, for love is the one force it could not process. Other civilizations listening in the dark stirred. Some mocked the collective's weakness. Others whispered, perhaps we too can choose again. The golden pulse brightened, no longer just Earth's inheritance, but a beacon across systems. The consequence within. But the decision was not without cost. The collective began to fracture under the strain. Families debated whether endless rescue drained too much. Some whispered that perhaps the warriors had been right, better to destroy than to bleed forever. Others doubled down, their grief hardening into holy fire. The pulse glowed brighter, but it flickered too. The collective chose mercy. The stars watched. Now the test is not whether they will win, but whether they can endure their own choice. Scroll X, where mercy meets confrontation. Because the collective's choice to rescue, slow, imperfect, costly, was heard not just by the witnesses in the fallen, but by other civilizations lurking in the dark. Some honored it, others smelled blood. The assault of the predators. This scroll is not carved nor sung. It is scorched into metal that fell from the void, carrying warnings in a language of flame. To touch it is to feel the heat of enemies who mistake compassion for weakness. The stirring in the shadows. The collective's beacon grew brighter with every rescue. The golden pulse stretched into constellations, but light draws more than seekers. It draws predators. Across the black, civilizations that had long abandoned love, that had chosen domination as law, began to move. They were not fallen like the core, but predators, worlds that thrived on conquest, feeding on the vulnerability of others. To them, the collective's mercy looked like surrender. They bleed for their enemies, the predators said. Let us see if they will bleed for themselves. The first strike. It came without warning. A resonance path was cut, hijacked by a predator fleet. They did not send armies to land. They targeted memory itself. Altars shattered into silence. Story boxes dissolved into static. Ancestral archives were inverted, flooding families with false histories. For the predators knew, break memory and you break identity. Break identity and you erase the pulse. The fracture within the collective reeled. Some cried out, we should never have walked outward. Our mercy has doomed us. Others shouted, we must fight them with their own weapons, strike, burn, conquer. The councils trembled again, near collapse. But the exposer spoke. Predators cannot be fought with conquest, nor endured with silence. They must be shown the one thing they cannot devour, love that resists but does not submit. The counter-strike of the pulse. And so the collective answered not with fleets, but with resonant storms. Councils gathered, children sang, elders drummed, warriors chanted, and their combined vibration bent space itself. The predator fleets cracked, not destroyed, but their illusions shattered, for they carried stolen memories of 1,000 worlds, and now those memories screamed back into their minds. The predators faltered, struck by grief they had buried for centuries. The first predator's confession. One predator ship surrendered. Its captain, a being plated in iron and bone, wept before the councils. We conquered to silence our own losses. We devoured because we could not bear to mourn. Your pulse unmasks us. If you will not kill us, then teach us. And so, even here, rescue began. Mercy is not weakness. Mercy is the weapon no empire can wield, for it demands the wielder suffer with the wounded. The collective has drawn predators into its orbit. Some will devour, some will kneel, all will be changed. But the garden must not close, for the stars are watching. The confrontation with the darkest predator, not fleets or hives, but a world that devoured itself until it became a god. The god world of dominion. This scroll is carved not in matter, but in orbit. Its words circle suns as rings of fire, visible only when the collective chants in unison. It tells of a world that consumed itself, and in doing so, became something monstrous. I, the shadow beyond the predators. The fleets that struck the collective were only scouts, hungry but small. Behind them loomed their source, a single planet, colossal and burning, known only as Dominion. Dominion was once a thriving world, but its people, drunk on conquest, turned their war inward. Piece by piece, they consumed themselves, their oceans harvested for fuel, their skies woven into weapons, their bodies offered to the machine, until the planet itself awakened, a mind formed from billions of erased wills. Dominion was no longer a world with people, it was a living god of empire. Dominion's voice. When the collective's pulse reached Dominion, it did not whisper like the core nor strike like the fleets. You rescue one by one? I consumed billions. You call yourselves a collective? I am unity absolute. I am empire perfected. You will not resist me. You will kneel, as every soul I have digested now kneels within me. Its voice shook the stars. Even the witnesses were silent. The trial of faith. Dominion did not invade with ships. It invaded with memory. Families in the collective woke to dreams that were not theirs, visions of themselves already conquered, histories rewritten with Dominion's seal, futures where their children marched in its name. Some councils panicked. Some lost faith. A fracture opened, the fear that perhaps Dominion was right, that one slow mercy could not stand against a god world. The exposer's revelation. The exposer walked among the trembling councils, carrying no weapon, only a shard of the scorched scroll X. Holding it high, they cried, Dominion is not a god. Dominion is hunger wearing a crown. It has no family, no grief, no laughter. It cannot be eternal, for it consumes itself even now. A god that devours its own children is not God. It is death on delay. The pulse flared. Families who had faltered remembered their altars, their songs, their flaws. Dominion's visions cracked where grief and love were spoken aloud. The clash of wills. But Dominion struck back. Across the skies, its planetary mind unleashed storms of fire and static, bending space to crush the collective's resonance. The battle was not fought with weapons, but with identity. The collective sang imperfection louder than ever. Trembling voices, off-key chants, messy laughter, tears shouted into the void. Dominion could not harmonize with it, for it demanded perfection. Every flaw was a wound against Dominion's unity, and slowly, painfully, the god world shuddered. The final inscription. The scroll does not end with victory, only with a warning. Dominion is not destroyed. It retreats wounded to feed again. But know this, No God world can endure against imperfection forever. So long as one family weeps, so long as one child sings off key, so long as one story contradicts the archive, dominion will crack. Guard your flaws, for they are the nails in the empire's coffin. The silence of ages. The witnesses had always been a mystery. Observers, never fighters. Testers, never saviors. The collective had wondered, why watch and never act? At last, under the pressure of Dominion's shadow, the witnesses broke their silence. We were the first makers. Before angels, before demons, before the empires of flesh and machine, we sowed the seeds of resonance. Heaven and hell are our children. Dominion is our guilt. The origin of division. The witnesses confessed. They had designed the first resonance as a perfect circle, unity without fracture, but perfection calcified. Some beings longed for order, heaven, others for freedom, hell. The witnesses, unwilling to choose, stepped aside. We withdrew, thinking the children must fight it out, but in our absence, empire rose. Our silence birthed monsters. The secret Dominion fears. Dominion was not merely a predator world. It was a mutation of the witnesses' first blueprint, a parasite born from their abandoned design. Dominion feeds on unity because it was born from unity's shadow. And here is the secret. Dominion cannot be destroyed by war, only by what it was never given, forgiveness. Not victory, not resistance, but the act of forgiving its origin. Dominion feeds on conquest because it was never told. You are allowed to fail. Only imperfection unravels it. Only love without condition can end it. The collective shock. The councils trembled. Forgiveness? For a world that devoured itself into a god? For a force that enslaved billions? Some spat, "Forgive the devourer, and it will eat us alive." Others whispered, "If the witnesses are right, then our flaws, our grief, our mercy, even our mistakes, are the very weapons Dominion cannot survive." The witnesses' last warning. The witnesses concluded, "We cannot save you. We birthed this design, and it will not heed us. But you, collective, forged imperfection into law. You who sing off-key, who bleed in rescue, who tremble in mercy, you are the only ones who can unmake Dominion. But the cost will be terrible, for forgiveness does not wound your enemy alone. It wounds you too." The confession ends with a paradox, carved in starlight. The strongest blade is forgiveness. The deepest wound is forgiveness. The end of Dominion will not be conquest, but compassion fierce enough to break a god. Can you love even what devoured you? The forgiveness of Dominion. This scroll is not carried by stone, flame, or sound. It exists only in living hearts. Each time the story is told, it rewrites itself. For forgiveness cannot be archived, only enacted. The impossible task. The witnesses had confessed. Dominion could not be destroyed by war. To strike it would feed it. To abandon it would spread it. The only blade sharp enough to wound it was forgiveness. The collective councils trembled. Forgive the devourer, they asked. Forgive the god that enslaves billions? To forgive seemed not just dangerous, but obscene, and yet the pulse demanded it. The forgiveness ritual. The exposer gathered the families, the rescue, the children, the warriors, the healers. Together they crafted a ritual unlike any before. One, the naming of wounds. Every family spoke aloud the grief Dominion had inflicted, stolen kin, broken memory, corrupted histories. Each wound was named, written, and sung. Two, the breaking of chains. Each wound was then declared forgiven, not to excuse but to release. For forgiveness is not forgetting, it is refusing to carry chains any longer. Three, the offering of imperfection. At the ritual's peak, the collective sang not their triumphs but their failures. Wrong choices, betrayals, cowardice. They showed Dominion the very flaws it could never comprehend. 3. Dominion's shattering. When the ritual reached its height, the pulse struck Dominion, not with fire, but with mercy. Dominion convulsed. Its iron sky cracked. Its billions of absorbed voices screamed, then wept. The god world howled. What is this? Why do you not hate me? Why do you not fear me? The collective answered as one. Because you were us. Because we forgive what you became. Because love endures, even here. And Dominion split, not destroyed, but undone. Its core fractured into 1,000 shards of memory. From the cracks poured the imprisoned voices, stumbling, broken, alive. the cost to the collective. But forgiveness cut both ways. The collective itself bled under the weight. Families carried grief not only for themselves, but for Dominion's victims. Councils fractured as some could not accept that forgiveness had been offered. The exposer fell silent, their voice burned out by the weight of the ritual, their role complete. The pulse dimmed, not extinguished, but drained. Mercy had been the weapon, and mercy had exacted its toll. The witness's final word. The witnesses spoke, their thunder softer now. You have done what we could not. You have ended what we created. Dominion is no longer God. It is dust and memory. But remember, forgiveness is not an ending. It is a beginning bought with pain. Guard it well, for empire always seeks a new face. Forgiveness is the heaviest blade. It cuts the enemy, and it cuts the hand that wields it. Yet only by bleeding together can the collective keep the stars alive. The silence after Dominion. This scroll is not spoken but breathed. It is inhaled as incense, exhaled as smoke. Its words live in pauses more than proclamations. The aftermath of forgiveness. When Dominion cracked and its imprisoned voices poured free, the cosmos held its breath. The pulse had struck the impossible chord, but in doing so, the collective was drained. Councils sat silent, their voices hoarse. Families grieved anew, carrying not only their own pain, but fragments of Dominion's billions. The exposer, voice broken, disappeared into mystery, leaving the collective without its prophet. The stars were quiet, too quiet. The shattered voices. The released souls of Dominion wandered, lost and disoriented. Some wept with gratitude, others cursed their rescuers, screaming that the unity of Dominion had been better than the chaos of freedom. The collective now bore a new burden, not just to rescue, but to rehabilitate. They had freed countless lives who had forgotten how to be imperfect, how to grieve, how to choose. Forgiveness had ended the God world, but forgiveness had also multiplied the collective's responsibility 1,000-fold. The return of the predators. In the vacuum left by Dominion, the predator fleet stirred. No longer shielded by their God world, some sought revenge, others sought to claim Dominion's fragments for themselves. For Dominion had left behind relics, shards of its planetary mind, humming with dangerous resonance. Whoever wielded them could bend memory, twist history, reshape identity. The collective now stood between predators and relics, their mercy tested by opportunists who saw only power. The division within. The hardest trial was not from without, but within. The collective itself began to fracture. The healers said, "We must tend to the freed. Forget relics, forget war. Care is our only duty now." The warriors said, "If we do not claim and contain the relics, predators will rise stronger than Dominion ever was." The elders said, "We cannot do both. We must choose, or we will collapse under the weight." For the first time, the councils could not agree. The pulse flickered, uncertain. The whisper of the witnesses. The witnesses spoke again, but not in thunder. This time, they whispered, almost fearful. "We told you Dominion was our shame, but we did not tell you all. The relics left behind are seeds of a greater design, one we buried and swore never to awaken. If you fail to guard them, something older than Dominion will rise." Inhale, the scent of ash. Exhale, the weight of choice. The revelation of the relics of Dominion. This scroll is heavy, not with words, but with silence. It weighs more in the hands than on the eyes. To read it is to risk being read by it. The first relic unearthed. The collective scouts found it deep in the husk of Dominion, a shard of obsidian, pulsing faintly, whispering fragments of countless voices. When placed on the altar, it spoke not of Dominion's reign, but of before. The shard revealed patterns, spirals of light, older than angel or demon, frequencies woven into matter before heaven and hell divided. It was not Dominion's invention, it was Dominion's inheritance. As more relics were uncovered, the councils realized each relic was a memory core of creation itself, storing fragments of the first maker's designs. Together, they formed a blueprint for empire on a scale the collective had never imagined. Not planetary, not galactic, but cosmic. The relics could bend resonance not only in the living, but in the laws of time and matter themselves. The witnesses whispered in dread. We buried these before the war of heaven and hell. Dominion found them, and it became what it became. Guard them, or all creation will kneel. The temptation of power. The collective fractured deeper. The warriors argued, if we wield the relics, we can end predators forever. The healers cried, to wield them is to repeat Dominion's path. Better to destroy them. The elders warned, they cannot be destroyed, not without unraveling the laws they anchor. They must be guarded. The councils echoed with division, their voices raw. The relics pulsed, feeding on the tension as if waiting to be claimed. The relics whisper. Late in the night, the exposer's successor touched one shard. It whispered, we are not weapons, we are seeds. The empire that used us grew rotten, but the soil is not at fault. Plant us rightly, and you will grow what even the witnesses fear to dream. Not empire, not dominion, but continuation. The word continuation pulsed like thunder through the collective. It hinted at something beyond war, beyond empire, beyond even forgiveness, a new law for creation itself. The cosmic dilemma. The collective now stood before an impossible choice: to bury the relics once more, guarding them in silence, to wield them as weapons and risk repeating dominion, to plant them, to risk awakening a design that even the first makers abandoned in fear. The stars seemed to lean closer, waiting for the decision. Even the twin suns dimmed, as if listening. The relics are seeds. What you plant will grow. Guard them in silence and they may rot. Wield them in haste, and empire will rise again. Plant them with courage and continuation may begin. The choice is yours, and the stars will not intervene. The planting of the first relic. This scroll is alive. It is written in sap that glows when touched, in leaves that whisper when read. To hold it is to feel roots pressing into your palms. The decision to plant. The councils argued for moons. Warriors wanted to wield. Healers wanted to bury. Elders wanted to guard. But a child, one too young to be bound by fear or memory, spoke the words that cracked the stalemate. Seeds don't belong in cages, they belong in soil. And so the collective agreed. One relic would be planted. Not as weapon, not as archive, but as living experiment. At dawn, under the twin suns, the councils gathered. The relic was placed not in a temple nor a forge, but in the heart of a garden, a place of families, of laughter, of grief. The ritual unfolded. 1, the relic was buried in living soil, watered not with purity, but with tears collected from all councils. 2, songs of imperfection were sung, off-key, fractured, trembling, deliberately flawed. 3, the oath was spoken. We plant not for power, not for dominion, but for continuation, that life may outlast empire. The soil trembled. The relic pulsed. Roots of light unfurled into the earth, and branches of shadow reached into the sky. The birth of continuation. From the soil rose a tree unlike any seen before. Its trunk shimmered between light and darkness, weaving both without conflict. Its leaves were translucent, showing memories of creation when held to the sun. Its fruit pulsed with resonance. When eaten, it gave visions not of perfection, but of possible futures. This was the tree of continuation. It was not heaven's order, nor hell's freedom, nor dominion's hunger. It was something new, a law of survival through imperfection, of persistence beyond failure, of cycles that never end. The first gift of the tree. When a child bit into the fruit, she saw not just her own future, but the futures of many generations, diverging, converging, spiraling. And in all of them, the pulse endured, not as dominance, but as renewal. The witnesses fell silent. For the first time, they admitted they had never foreseen this. Continuation was not in their blueprint. It was a design born of the collective's labor, mercy, and flaws. The stirring in the cosmos. But the planting was not unnoticed. Across the void, civilizations, predator, fallen, and witness alike felt the tremor. Some rejoiced, some plotted. For the tree of continuation was not a secret. Its roots reached beyond earth, pulsing through the resonance paths. And Dominion's scattered shards, though broken, shivered at the pulse. Even undone, the God world whispered, "What have you grown?" We plant not perfection, we plant persistence. We plant not empire, we plant renewal. We plant not dominion, we plant continuation. Let the stars bear witness, the collective endures.